Okay, with any presentation, you have to have a scope, so you understand what I'm going to be doing. What I'd like to do this morning is actually, even though I've been allotted 45 minutes, I'll speak for about 30. But as per when I was instructing soldiers and army officers, I like you to ask questions because it's very dull, me being didactic. So as we go along, put your hand up. Stephanie, this is Stephanie's fitness program this morning. She'll be running around with the microphone, and you can ask any question. Everybody clear on this? Roger that. It's a term. So you heard Stephanie, introduction. I'm a fourth generation farmer. We're still going broke, but we still have the farm in Currumbin Valley, which is the main thing. Brief history, my great-great-uncle had very large banana farms in Fiji before World War I, and he was exporting 12,000 tonnes a month to Melbourne, Sydney and Auckland. So he had 3 freighter ships, which were doing a 4-week rotation around the Pacific. That was all good until 1915. That was from 1900 to 1915, and then World War I broke out. And so under the Constitution, the Australian government requisitioned these 3 freighter ships to take soldiers and troops to Gallipoli, including Arthur Freeman's younger brother, Major Tom Freeman, who went to Gallipoli on his own brother's ship. So there's a joke in the family, Uncle Tom got a free lift on Uncle Arthur's boat. Fortunately, he came back, but because of the ships, Arthur Freeman couldn't then grow and export his bananas in Fiji. So he came out to Australia where we are, on Tomawan Mountain. Anybody been to Currumbin Valley? Hands up. High on the top of Currumbin Valley is what's called the Tomawan Mountain Range, which is a unique outflow from Mount Warning of basalt. And that's the gem or the genius we have with our soil, and I'll go into the unique minerals and paramagnetism of that soil and why we can grow such nutrient-dense food. So Arthur kicked off there in 1915. He employed 40 men from the cane fields. They cleared up to 300 acres, 100 acres of bananas and a couple of 100 acres for cattle. And he was the largest commercial banana farm in Australia until probably the Second War. My late father was a fighter pilot. My uncle was a bomber pilot. They both came back from the war, and Dad took over a large portion of the farm, and he farmed that till he was 97. And then I, as the apprentice, I took over 11 years ago when Dad retired at 90, and I've been running the farm ever since. So my talk today is, even though we were spray-free, I was passionate about organic farming. I did a lot of study in the army before I retired, and I definitely didn't want to go down the chemical path because I saw the damage it was doing to our environment, killing the microbiology, the pressure on climate change with obviously the production of agrochemicals, which requires the industrial process, and just nurturing and regenerating our beautiful red volcanic soil. You can bring it back as to when it was created with that beautiful 10% organic matter and all those minerals available where we can grow obviously the world's most nutrient-dense food. And part of my journey in this is to help veterans because we all suffer from gut health from our deployments, which in turn leads to mental health. And I'm a case study, I'm still walking, so that's good. But I'm now eating healthy organic fruit and vegetables, and I actually eat my red soil, which is wacky, but I think it helps the gut biome. Okay, so the slide clearly indicates this is not what organic farming's about. The modern agriculture, sadly, is just since Monsanto started after World War II, where they went round, it was called the Green Revolution, and part of the reason why after World War II there was such a move to chemical farming was that there were millions of tonnes of urea left over from World War II, because I only found out when I did some research, the very airstrip my father was landing on in Borneo in the islands, is that when the Yanks built them, they actually bulldozed them and then they put urea on as a sort of a top dress, and it killed everything. And so there were millions of tonnes of urea left over from the war. So those agrochemical companies then started peddling it and say, look, if you put this on your crops, it'll improve your crop. And yes, it did for a while. It was a sugar hit. But then because of the very nature of the fertiliser, it's acidic, It then changed and made the soil far more acidic, which then led to pressure with insects, fungicide. Then Monsanto says, all right, well, now we'll sell you a fungicide. Now we'll sell you an insecticide. Now we'll sell you a pre-emergent. Then we'll sell you a post-harvest thing. So the poor farmer then unwittingly got into this cycle of chemical farming. And the Darling Downs, which 120 years ago was regarded as the most fertile soil on earth, where they could not increase their wheat yield, even with fertiliser, now, after 50, 60, 70 years of chemical farming, those farms cannot grow a crop without chemicals because the soil has become so degraded. And my journey is to educate and train people to say, look, it's a journey, but if you get in there, you can regenerate your soil. You can then grow high-quality, nutrient-dense food, and that, apart from benefiting the environment, by not using chemicals on your land, you can then grow much higher quality, nutrient-dense food, which helps your gut health, which helps your mental health, which Layla was talking about in the first presentation. Benny, put your hand up. Benny lives in a tiny house on my farm, and this is the broccoli that was growing before I allowed him to put his tiny house on that little bit of flat land. So Benny, when we get back there, we'll be industrious and we'll plant some more winter veggies this winter. You'll see there that chemical farming tends to be a reaction. So if a farmer's got a sudden insect outbreak, the first thing they'll do, they'll jump on a tractor, get a broad spectrum insecticide and go out and spray everything, killing not only the good insects but the bad insects. They tend to be copper-based insecticides. And the trouble, especially in the avocado industry, in which I'm very passionate about, is that that copper then runs off the leaves and into the top 12 inches, for metric people, 30 centimetres, and that kills all your microbiology in the top of your soil. You then unwittingly, by killing that, your avocado tree, which is a rainforest tree, which is very shallow-rooted, you're then killing those essential roots, and you're unwittingly killing your avocado tree by spraying insecticides. It's what I call dumb farming, because you'll kill your trees. It's just not clever. Whereas organic farming, you have to be proactive. You've got to plan ahead. You've got to work with nature rather than against it. And as I go further into the talk, we'll talk about integrated pest management, where I'll hand around these beautiful little soldiers called the Anastatus wasp, which kill a nasty natural insect called the fruit spotting bug. So the 12 principles we apply at our farm. We're very passionate about the soil. Can everybody hear me okay? We're very passionate about soil and soil science. As I said in the army, fool is the lawyer who represents himself, and fool is the farmer who doesn't study the science first. So rather than finishing my PhD in international human rights law, I had 12 months at full pay from the army because I had a few injuries. So I went to TAFE with all these dropouts from Sydney, the TAFE at Wollongbar, and I studied organic farming, and it was the best year of my life. We talked about tractor porn and organic stuff, and who had the biggest tractor was like the king in the classroom. Wacky guys like me, but we really had some fun. And it's over on that beautiful red soil plateau at Alstonville, so very similar, identical conditions to my farm. So I was able to take a lot of the knowledge and skills from that course and then apply it to my farm. So these are the 12 principles I've actually distilled and what I practice now on our organic farm. You've got to start with doing a soil test. There's no two ways about it. You can look at the red soil and think, oh, it's beautiful, it's great, isn't it? But until you get that soil test back from environmental analysis laboratories at Southern Cross Uni, that's the truth serum. It tells you what state your soil is in. And not only do I get a soil analysis of the minerals and trace elements, I actually get a test on the microbiology and also the paramagnetism. Has anybody heard of paramagnetism? No one? I thought it was for hippies until I read the book. It's actually a unique science. Out of our volcanic soil, there are certain rivers or streams that run through that mountain, and our farm just happens to be on a ley line that has this wonderful high paramagnetic reading of 4,000 parts per million, when I sent it to Southern Cross Uni, they had only ever recorded between 1 and 2,000, and most of what I unkindly call the mongrel soil on the Gold Coast, it'll have a paramagnetic reading of 100. So paramagnetism is this natural minerals in the soil that are able to release more minerals into your plants, and when you have any electrical or thunderstorm activity, the 65% of nitrogen in the atmosphere, that can convert then into your soil. So I've calculated when I have a thunderstorm at my farm, I'm getting 65,000 tonnes of free nitrogen. So it's always green, you get tremendous growth, but it's more that the chemical or the minerals in the soil will release more minerals so your plants can take that up and you have a stronger plant, healthier plant, a plant with sweeter tasting fruit and longer shelf life and nutrient density. So that's why, but with your soils, by looking at that soil test, you can actually critically look at where you are deficient, and then you can add those minerals like a soil scientist to balance your soil. That's the first part to get your soil minerally balanced, but the second part is to get that microbiology in your soil. And that's where the composting and the organic matter is very important, because once you have that microbiology in the top 1-2 feet of your soil, that's where the minerals cycle and the plants can take it up. Are there any questions on that so far? Everybody good? Righto. Organic matter, Benny would tell you that I'm obsessed. I've got about 200 cubic metres of ramial wood chip. The good news is Tomawan is a very mountainous road with a lot of trees. We've always got tree loppers up there. They have to take the wood chip away. They know there's this nutty organic farmer, so they just come and dump it without even asking. So I've got enough wood chip to last me 10 years, and I leave it for nearly 2 years, and then it's what we call ramial wood chip, and it's got the mycorrhiza fungi which is growing in it, and I'll explain the genius and the benefits of mycorrhiza fungi later. Garden bed rotation is important. Those of you who watch Costa, it's just been around for 1,000 years. Don't grow the same crop in the same bed. If you keep growing brassicas in the same bed, you'll get clubfoot. You have to rotate your veggies so you don't build up soil disease and disease in the soil. Fungi and bacteria. Obviously, bacteria is good for a bacteria-dominant soil you want for vegetables, but for fruit trees, of which I've got nearly 800, you want a fungal-dominated soil, and that's where your ramial wood chip around your fruit trees is more important than bacterial. You want the fungal to create that correct mycorrhiza fungi in the soil. Companion planting, it's a no-brainer. I can effectively grow my organic veggies without even organic sprays, and I accept that you'll get some loss, but if you can do a strict rotation of rotating your beds and companion planting, you can seriously reduce your insect pressure on your crop. IPM, that's integrated pest management. That's where we'll talk about the Anastatus wasps. Plant nutrition. Obviously, we talked about the soil tests and adding the minerals like a soil scientist to get your soil perfectly balanced, but only using organic inputs. So if you're low in phosphate, you use soft rock phosphate from central Queensland rather than buying the chemical processed superphosphate. Weed management, that's always a challenge with veggies. There is a certified organic weed gunnel, which I've come across, and I just simply lay it out over the top of the prepared soil and then just cut a little hole in it, put the seedling in. It means you can grow the crop basically for 6 months without weed pressure. And site allocation, we're up on top of a mountain. We have 3 mini microclimates. Obviously in the winter, technical, just bear with me. Are we back live? Clayton? Righto, mate. We're back live? Righto, sorry. Site allocation, whenever you're planting something, you've got to seriously have a look at your aspect. Obviously in the southeast Queensland, if you're going to grow winter veggies, you want to have 6 hours of sunshine through your winter months, so you need a northerly slope where you're getting the winter sun. Obviously, I have 3 mini microclimates on my farm where I can grow tropical, subtropical and warm temperate. So for those warm temperate crops like your minimum chill apple, peach, nectarine and apricots, I've put them round on the southern slope where I've calculated you can get 300 hours of chilling at 7 degrees Celsius, even though my air temperature doesn't drop below 10. But by the wind chill factor, I'm able to get that dormancy to then induce a crop, so I can actually grow apples, apricots, plums, where normally they'd only be growing up on the New England or somewhere colder. So in southeast Queensland, we're blessed with where the tropics meet the temperates, so you can grow a great range of tropical, subtropical and warm temperate crops. There's a great nursery in Kyogle called Daly's. Anybody heard of Daly's? Yep. They're online. They've got over 500 different plants all suitable for southeast Queensland. They love when they see me coming because I just put it on the credit card and go mad. But they've got such a good range of exotic trees there, I just can't help myself. You'll see the benefits there of organic farming. Obviously, one of the most important things is to improve our organic matter and the soil carbon and maximise the moisture in our soil. Now, the beauty of any of these disciplines of increasing your organic matter, whether it's a ramie or wood chip or the compost you make, when you put that out around the canopy or what we call the catchment or the drip line of your fruit tree, that compost will be taken down by worms and other microorganisms about 1 metre down into your soil, and that forms a reservoir when you have the monsoonal rains. So can everybody remember back to 2019 when we had the drought? Okay, so Currumbin Creek and Tellabudger Creek stopped flowing in our district. That's when Jinibara burnt down. That was when we had that extreme drought for nearly, some say the worst in 100 years. In March that year, I had gone out and wood chipped and mulched my 300 avocado trees in the monsoons, not knowing by June, July, we'd run into the worst drought we'd had, which went for 6 months. The result of having that compost and that carbon, that organic layer down 1 metre, which was taken down by the worms, etc., is that compost was able to absorb 9 times the volume of water than soil without compost. So I effectively had this reservoir in the top 1 metre of my soil, and even 3 months into the drought, I went out and scratched under the trees and it was still wet. I got through that whole drought without having to irrigate, and I didn't lose 1 avocado, whereas the conventional chemical farmers over in the Austinville Plateau, who use herbicides, have no organic matter in the top layer, their trees went into shock and jettisoned the whole crop because a tree in drought will abort its crop to survive to the next year. So the point I'm making is that by practicing this very sensible idea of having organic matter around, especially your fruit trees, not only does it keep your soil cooler in summer, it absorbs the water rather than being hydrophobic where it runs off. It will actually absorb the heavy monsoon rain, but then it will act as a reservoir in your soil for 6, 7, 8 months. So it evens out the moisture stress on your trees. The other beautiful thing about compost, it gets rid of all your green waste scraps in the kitchen rather than sending it to the green waste dump. And thirdly, it sequesters carbon dioxide out of the Earth's atmosphere, helping to reduce our greenhouse gases. And fourthly, it creates the mycorrhiza fungi, which attaches to the end of the root, and that will go out 10 times the distance of the root of your fruit tree, and then will link up in your orchard to the other fruit trees. And so the book, The Trees Talk to Each Other, it's real. And I saw this through the drought, that the avocados I had planted in the orchard, because they had this wood chip, they actually had a mycorrhiza fungi, what I call the underground internet, which is free, unlike Telstra, and doesn't break down. And the trees talk to each other, and they'll send each other mineral and water, just like a rainforest. And that's That's really cool when you see that happening on your own farm, because you're recreating what Mother Nature's taught us in the rainforest. Any questions on mycorrhiza fungi? Anybody practicing Ramiel wood chip in their orchards or gardens? Compost? Yep. It's brilliant, isn't it? Good on you. Well, part of organic farming is to improve our soil fertility. And you'll see the indicators of soil health. There is a pH, a physical soil texture, the soil nutrition. This test from Southern Cross Uni will give you the 16 essential minerals. And then if you're deficient, the big four, what we call the big four, is calcium, magnesium, phosphorus and potassium. And you've got to make sure you have the correct ratios and balances between those, and that's a whole science and discipline within itself. Organic matter, I've spent a lot of time on that, and that creates a much healthier soil biology. Okay, does anybody know what the ideal pH is for growing your fruit and vegetables? Sorry? 7 is neutral. Most textbooks say 6.4, 6.5, just very slightly acidic. Because you'll see from that graph there, if you look closely, it's a bit hard, but if you look down what we see neutral, which is 7, you'll see optimum levels of nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, sulfur and calcium. You'll see if you get too acidic down in the 4.5s or 5s, you'll taper off on those essential 4 minerals, the calcium, magnesium, phosphorus and potassium, and then you'll have toxic levels of aluminium and manganese, which will make your plants very sick. If you're too alkaline, if you go over to the purple, you'll see once you go past maybe 8, 8.5, you drop right off in nitrogen, and you drop off in iron, you drop off in boron. Boron, in my red volcanic soil, boron's a very important mineral and trace element, especially for avocados and sweet potatoes. And so if you can hit that sweet spot of 6.5 to 7, that's where your soil will make available what we call optimum levels of your major minerals and trace elements. So for $20, as Molly Meldrum would say, do yourself a favour and go and buy a soil test kit, and you can then test your own garden. And if you're not at 6.5, you're just wasting your time and your money, because your plants will not grow to the optimum height. You will not grow healthy plants. They'll get attacked by insects, and you'll give up in frustration. You can simply, most coastal soils are acidic, well below 6.5, but you can remedy that simply by applying garden lime or horticultural lime, and then you retest your soil, and once you hit 6.5 and add your organic matter, Mother Nature does the rest. Everybody clear on pH? Any questions? Yes?
Well, there are some plants that prefer more acidic soil, like blueberries, for example.
Yeah, look,
Would
that's...
still the 6.5 work for them?
It does. I'm growing blueberries on my farm at 6.5. They will grow at 4.8, but they'll also grow at 6.5. So I say to the poor blueberries, I've got another 100 crops that need 6.5, so just hang in there, buddy, and go for 6.5. And guess what? The blueberries still grow well at 6.5. If you're not at 6.5 on my farm, sorry, you're not going to grow. It's 6.5 or nothing. But also 10% organic matter, whereas most agricultural soils in Australia are only 2%. So that's why, sadly, over 100 years of intensive broadacre agriculture, most of Australia's agricultural soils are as low as 1 or 2%. Does anybody know the Coogin Plateau just west of Kingscliff? Yeah. Okay. They've been farming vegetables there for over 100 years. It was the same soil as mine. Mine is chocolate brown with worms and 10% organic matter. That soil on the Coogin Plateau has been so over-farmed, it's now this pale pink and has 1% organic matter, and they can't grow vegetables there without a full regime of chemicals. Now, that said, you can regenerate that soil. It takes you about 3 years, but you've got to stop using the chemicals. And the pH on that red soil is dropped as low as 4.5 because it's just had so much acidic chemical fertiliser. It's acidified the soil. It's killed the microbiology. But if you're passionate about it and you start balancing your soil again minerally, growing the organic matter, turning in green manures and all the rest, you can turn that soil around in 3 or 4 years. So that's why this movement of regenerative agriculture is gaining momentum, because I think a lot of new farmers are realising that for generations the soil had been neglected, over-farmed, too many agrochemicals, and we've got to stop the ship and rebuild it and regenerate the soil. That's just a depiction there. If you walk through your garden, this is just telltale signs. If you've got a sick plant, there'll be yellowing, which might be a lack of nitrogen, or there'll be strips on it. So there's textbooks to show you what each sick leaf looks like, and that'll give you, that's what we call a combat indicator, what is deficient in your soil. But I always start with a soil test, and once you're at 6.5 in organic matter and a healthy microbiology in your soil, as I said, Mother Nature seems to do the rest, and you get very little what I call nutrient deficiency in your plants. They're bright green, they grow beautifully, and the fruit tastes better. And when you can put on silicon, I use a silicon compost. Also, the silicon has a couple of great benefits. Firstly, it makes the leaf and the stem a lot stronger, which is resistant to insects that what we call, which are sucking insects which damage the leaves. Also because the Brix then in your leaves and your fruit is as high as 16 or 18. When the insect goes to eat your leaves and your fruit, that's a very high natural sucrose at 16. It ferments in the gut of the insect and it'll fall off because it's drunk or it's too fermented for it. And the third genius is, and this is where my Army Special Operations come in, is that the silicon emits a different radio frequency into the air. So when it comes in, it buggers up the radar on the insects and they fly down to Palm Beach and eat theirs instead of mine. So that's what I call psychological operations on the enemy. And it's working. Obviously, we want to promote ecological balance. You'll see the key indicators there for ecological health. It's very important with that organic matter because if you don't have it, you won't develop that microbiology in the top 1 metre of your soil. That's the magic. That's what you need. Apart from the balanced mineral soil, you need to have a high level of microbiology happening in your soil. So those worms, I've got earthworms that are over 1 metre long. What the beauty about worms, and the next speaker I think's going to talk about worms, is that when I started my veggie gardens, I didn't bring any worms in, and now I've created these garden beds with all the things I've spoken to. In a 12 square metre garden bed, I've calculated that I have 12,000 worms, and that then equates to 200 kilograms of worm exudate, which is a polite term, and so you've got this living fertiliser factory just happening every day. And there's nothing better than worm poo. It's the best fertiliser you can have. But worms also, their castings and the way they go down through your soil profile, they then restructure your soil so it's much more open. You're getting more oxygen. You're getting the ability to absorb water. Water then percolates through your soil profile rather than a flat clay pan which is hydrophobic, meaning the water runs off your garden. So by creating that excellent microbiology in your profile, naturally brings in worms, which give you that natural fertiliser, restructuring your soil to absorb water and not waterlog it. We got some worm farmers here, hands up. Good man. You want to tell me about your worms, buddy? Yes. Yep. Microphone's coming, champ.
Dolomite versus more expensive volcano-based mineral supplements that people put on their garden or in their compost. So I wonder how many trace minerals might actually be in just commercial dolomite. That means.
So can you ask that question? What about the dolomite? Is that your question?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I know. We know magnesium and calcium's in dolomite, but I wonder if there's a lot of trace minerals as well, and it's like might be a good bang for your buck way of getting minerals into your soil, in contrast to going and buying specialised, I guess it's volcano-based minerals that are meant to be a balanced,
Dolomite is calcium sulfate versus calcium carbonate. So dolomite won't change the pH of your soil, but it'll open it up and give it the phosphates it needs. It's a fairly simple mineral like calcium carbonate, which is lime. So if you're deficient in other trace elements or specific minerals, then you would need to source those amendments, and that might be the pelagonites or some of those volcanic minerals, or some people use basalt crusher dust, which gives you, that's the blue metal you see on the roads, and that has the paramagnetism in it as well. But offline we can talk more about those subtle nuances.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? So you'll see that above ground is very important as well, and there's Queensland Bioresources, which when I eventually get to my Anastasis wasps, they're doing some great research with a mate of mine, Ross Arnett, in Alstonville, who has Malua macadamia farm. They're growing between 16 and 18 different flowering plants down the rows of macadamia, because the Sagastis weevil is something that is decimating the macadamia industry. And Ross was trying to be an organic farmer like me, but the insect pressure on his farm is so great that he had to go back to using soft chemicals to control the Sagastis weevil. It's basically going to wipe out the whole macadamia industry in Australia. It's a war stopper, to use a military term. But Ross, with a bloke called Richard Llewellyn, who started Queensland Bioresources, they've worked out by doing multi-species planting of perennials, legumes, and a whole combo. Let's call it the Magic 16. This brings in a unique range of beneficial insects, which is basically, out of 10,000 trees, he's probably only got 200 trees now that are affected by Sagastis weevil. And because he's far more clever than me, he's got a drone with insecticide on a computer, which just goes and sprays the affected tree, not the whole 10,000 trees. So whilst he's not fully organic, he's using soft chemicals and only targeting, as I say, about 200 trees out of his whole orchard. So the other beauty about having these extensive cover crops in combinations of legumes and perennials, after I did this, anybody done the Nutritech Solution 5-day course with Graham Sate? Hands up. He's a walking encyclopedia, isn't he? So after I'd done it for the 4th time, because I'm a remedial student, no, I love it. I go every 2 years because you just learn more from Graham every time you go. I came back and I started planting cover crops and legumes, perennials like ryegrass, oatgrass, red clover and clovers under the avocado. And exactly what Graham said, I went and then had a look at the nodules of the clover, and I opened it up and it was red inside, like hemoglobin. So by having that mix of perennials and legumes, I'm creating more oxygen in my soil, which is what you need for any tree, and especially the avocado, which if it gets wet feet, lack of oxygen when you've got the monsoonal rains, that's why they get phytophthora and die. So by doing this quite bespoke selection of under canopy cover cropping, not only are you improving the tillage and the nitrogen from the legumes, but you're creating this unique chemical process under the ground which is creating hemoglobin and a much healthier soil. Has anybody heard about that? It's very cool when you open up a nodule of clover and it's red and not white, because it means you've got hemoglobin and oxygen. Your tree's going to live. It's good news. Okay, we just talked about the pollinators. There's a whole new sort of discipline happening with what I call multi-species undercover cover crops. And, you know, the obsession with macadamia farmers was to mow down the middle like it looked like a lawn and a park. Well, actually, that just doesn't work because you don't have any diversity. The tractor then compacts between the trees. They're getting phytophthora and root damage. So Ross has this beautiful sort of flower garden in between each of his rows, and the soil has improved markedly, but he's reduced, his spraying and his insect damage by nearly 90%. So this is once again what we call integrated pest management, or using Mother Nature by having multi-species cover crops, legumes, to bring in the good beneficials. Because if you've got a monoculture or monocrop like macadamias, there's 10,000 of them, you don't have any resistance because those Sargassus weevils or fruit spotting bug, they just come in and they don't have any resistance. So you've got to build up your own army in your orchard and have those good beneficials to try and reduce the damage of the bad insects which come in a swarm. Obviously, you've all seen the soil food web. You'll see there the importance of the plants there on my left and the organic matter, and that obviously creates that rich diversity of microorganisms, the nematodes, the arthropods, the fungi, which I'm very passionate about as an avocado farmer. I like my soils to be fungal dominant to create that mycorrhiza fungi, bacteria, protozoa. So you've got a whole living microbiology under your soil if you create the preconditions. If you don't do it, you'll have no activity underground. And that's where the minerals and the mineral uptake and the nutrient uptake happens with all plants. You can see there below the ground, these are all the little critters we need. Compost, that creates it, it gives you nutrients and also beneficial organisms. We talked about the cover crops, green manure, even with the tennis court behind Benny's house. After we've grown a winter crop of vegetables, we'll put that into green manure, let that grow to its maximum height, then we slash that and then turn that back into the soil, and that then sterilises or sanitises your soil from any build-up of soil disease, and also puts all that beautiful organic matter back into the soil, which refreshes and revitalises your soil. Romeo wood chip, that's just wood chip that's either from the rainforest or you've left sit out for nearly maybe 18 months, and when you scratch through it, you'll see the white fungus growing. That's where you've developed that beautiful mycorrhiza fungi, which is your free underground internet, because I don't trust Telstra. I like an internet that works. Sorry if anybody works for Telstra. Righto, here's where we do the pass around the classroom. Get ready. So when I got out of the army, because we didn't spray our avocados, there was an indigenous insect called the fruit spotting bug. It attacks not only avocados, custard apples, bananas, pawpaws and macadamias. They come in a swarm and they can damage your orchard, in an afternoon. And has anybody bought an avocado where it's got the divots and the bumps in the outside? Yep. And on the inside there's a hard calcification. That is caused by the fruit spotting bug. So where they sting the avocado on the outside, that results in a wound on the inside, which is why you get the hard calcium. It nearly breaks your teeth. You get angry, you pay $3 for it and you throw it in the bin, correct? Okay, or you scrape it with a spoon very judiciously. I said to my father, how can we stop this? Because the fruit spotting bugs seem to be getting worse and worse. But I wasn't prepared to use any agrochemicals or any copper-based insecticide. So on this course in Wallingborough through Richard Llewellyn, I learned about a natural cure called, also an indigenous insect, called the anastatus wasp, which is a natural predator of the fruit spotting bug. So how do you get the anastatus wasp in sufficient numbers to counteract the damage by the fruit spotting bug? Richard Llewellyn in his insectary at Samford discovered if you get silkworm eggs, when we used to be friendly with China, and you put them in your insectary, you then put the larvae of the anastatus wasp into the silkworm egg, then puts it on a cardboard strip, then posts it out to me in Australia Express every 3 weeks, and then Benny at the back there, he's a poor bloke's got to go around my farm with a stapler and put them around the 300 trees. Thanks, Benny. Good work, mate. But I've been able to reduce the damage to my avocados from 40% to less than 1% by using this. Could I have a demo to pass this around the class, please? They don't bite. Can somebody come and pass this around? So why I'm showing you this is what's called clever farming. This is where organic farmers, you've got to think ahead and not react and just jump on an $80,000 tractor, spray the whole orchard where you kill not only the good insects, but the bad insects. This cost me $1,500 a year, plus Benny walking round, to staple every 3 weeks. When it first arrived, I was a year out of the army, and this is on Channel 9 if you want to watch it for a joke. There's a program called My Way, which I never watched until I was on it. I didn't see it. My mother saw it because I was still in the paddock. It was in December 2022. It's a nice little story, goes for 8 minutes. But they're filming the boys putting the anastasis wasps out around the insect. And we had a postman who was an Englishman with a great sense of humour. And he rang me because on the first delivery, he was very worried because the box was addressed to Lieutenant Colonel Freeman and was vibrating. And he thought it was a letter bomb from the Taliban. So I said, mate, it's okay. He said, don't touch it. I think it's a letter, because it was going bzzz. So then I opened it up and he realised they're just insects and it wasn't a letter bomb. So he's now very polite. What he does, he drives all the way down to the shed, puts them in the cool of the shed. Then he rings me and says, Colonel, the army's arrived. And so this is a game changer. So this is where if you think smart, you've got to order these obviously in advance. But the whole idea of organic farming is being proactive, planning your insect program management rather than jumping on a big tractor and just spraying it with a broad-based spray which kills good insects, bad insects, and ends up unwittingly killing all the microbiology in your soil. That's what I call dumb farming, because you eventually kill your avocado tree. And that costs you 20 grand a year to run that tractor and sprays. It's just not clever. You can do it, integrated pest management, using nature to fight nature. So those little fellas there, reduced 40% down to 1%. Anybody got avocados, custard apples, macadamias, pawpaws, bananas in the room? Okay. Do you get any fruit spotting bug damage? Yeah. If you use those little fellas, that chases the enemy away. Anastasis wasp from Queensland Bioresources. It's a game changer. There's just a little graph of the different bugs, good bugs, bad bugs. You can read them in a textbook. Obviously, we improve our organic matter and the soil carbon. And we talked about cover crops. What are the benefits of cover crops? You can see there. It suppresses the weeds. It also suppresses disease. It's a beneficial habit for all those beautiful beneficial insects I talked about on Ross Arnett's macadamia farm. It retains nutrition. It accumulates nitrogen, especially with all your legumes. Builds organic matter. And we've had extreme weather over the last 10 years, and we're getting more of it. You know, we had 998 millimetres in one day on my farm. That's a lot of rain. And that was in the 2021 or one of those floods. But I never leave any square inch of my soil of my farm uncovered. If I've got to do earthworks and there's new red soil, I immediately plant a cover crop or some sort of cover, because if I get heavy monsoonal rain, all that beautiful soil washes down into the river, and that's just irresponsible. So cover cropping also helps stop erosion. It's a brilliant erosion control on my steep gullies. Those of you who are composting, we've got a composter over here, haven't we? You need a mix of what we call brown and green. Brown is your carbon, green is your nitrogen. And as I said earlier, compost, it's just a win-win, because not only does it get rid of all your scraps, it doesn't go to the green waste, you're building your own compost in your backyard, you're sequestering carbon dioxide, and you are helping reduce greenhouse gas. Worm farms, the next speaker will talk more about worms, so I'll flip through this. We talked about retaining water, and we've gone into detail about composting, mulch and ramual wood chip. It's just a win-win. Whatever organic matter you put down, your garden will benefit and the earth will benefit. And we talked about the beneficial insects, what my friend Ross Arnett's doing in his macadamia farm. Companion planting, there's a whole book on it. We do it on my farm. It does work. I think it reduces insect damage by 50%. Crop rotation, been doing it for 1,000 years, very important. Now, the nutritional value of food, I'll just finish on this if I can, Stephanie. The previous speaker talked about nutrient-dense food. What my whole quest is on my farm is to be able to grow the world's most nutrient-dense fruit and vegetables. Why am I doing that? Because I don't want people to eat rubbish. Secondly, as a veteran who came back after 5 tours with, after having 24 needles going to Iraq, my gut health was shot. Anybody who's been exposed to trauma or war or any first responder, that affects your gut health, which in turn affects your mental health. So by being able to grow nutrient-dense food on my farm, now I've created the Veterans Organic Garden, that all the veterans and the volunteers I have there are now growing this beautiful nutrient-dense food. And it's not only the hands in the soil, which the biome and being with nature, but by eating that better quality fruit and vegetable, that is physically improving their gut health, and there's a direct correlation to improved mental health. So that's why I've set up the program called Healing Through Farming. And the veterans that are coming, I can just see the benefit in their quality of life, spring in their steps. Some of these guys hadn't come out of their house for a year, and now I can't keep them away from the place. They're there. He's working till 10 o'clock at night, one of them. He's sending me photos at midnight of the stuff he's done. I said, mate, go to bed. Practice biodiversity, and all those things I've gone through. If you follow those steps, you can, in your backyard, have a healthy organic vegetable garden or fruit that is nutrient dense, is going to be more resistant to disease, and then you can feed your family healthy nutrient dense food, and the benefits are unquestioned. All right, questions? Any? Those of you got burning questions, if I'm out of time, Stephanie, s'il vous plaît.
We have time for maybe one question. And
one question, s'il vous plaît. Un moment. That's French for one moment. Oui or no? Excellent. Yes, madam.
Thank you for your talk. It's been great. Obviously, you're talking about farming on a big scale, but
Yeah.
I live at the coast and I live in a unit.
Yes.
I do have a really tiny, patch, and I do grow some things in containers, but with some difficulty. Have you got any advice for somebody like me that's, trying to grow in containers and, obviously in a sandy soil? I put lots of compost and, it's a work in progress.
Well, just go back to basics and do the pH on your sandy soil, whatever the mix is. And if it's not meeting that 6.5 and doesn't have the minerals, then buy some good quality soil from a landscaper.
Yeah.
Make sure you get 6 hours of winter sunshine.
Yeah.
Do the companion planting to reduce your insect damage. And use a liquid nitrogen sea sol or a kelp once a week to give it that nutrition through the leaves.
Okay, as often as that.
Say again?
As often as every week with the sea
Yeah,
salt.
once every 2 weeks, because if you've got sandy, weak soil and potting
Oh,
mix, it's probably got no guts in it, so you've got to
No.
give it a bit of nutrition.
Sure.
Yeah,
Okay, thanks.
righto, my pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for your time and your indulgence. If any of those who have got questions, I think there's 15, 14 minutes before the next presentation. I'm happy for you to come up and ask questions. Oh, I've got some presents for you. Stand by.
Thank you very much, Colonel David.